We've been exploring the question of, could mammals survive the dinosaurs in many of our recent videos, and with Thanksgiving just around the corner, I think it's time we explore an alternate history scenario of whether the Pilgrims could have survived if they landed in a Mesozoic America. So let's start with a quick history refresher. The Pilgrims were a group of English separatists seeking religious freedom. Fleeing persecution, 102 individuals sailed on the Mayflower, and after about 2 months of sailing, arrived in what is now modern-day Massachusetts in November of 1620. After landing, the Pilgrims struggled to establish themselves, facing a harsh winter. This winter would claim many lives, to the point where when spring finally came by, only about half of the original passengers were alive, owing to lack of sufficient shelter for cold northeastern winters and limited provisions, leading to the colonists being susceptible to diseases such as scurvy and pneumonia. After their winter came to an end, the subsequent years showed much greater success than what they had previously witnessed. The Pilgrims gained essential agricultural knowledge from the Wampanoag tribe in exchange for protection against another local tribe. The natives also introduced corn to the settlers, which became a turning point, providing sustenance and a crucial crop for the settlers to survive. Fast forward later that year to November of 1621, a year after the original arrival of the Pilgrims. Here they would commemorate their own successes and appreciation to the Wampanoag tribe with a 3-day feast, which was likely a communal celebration shared between them and the Wampanoag tribe. This feast, featuring many types of food such as venison, fowl, seafood, corn, and many more, and it is now recognized as the first Thanksgiving. Now that's a nice story, but I think it's time we throw a little salt in that Thanksgiving, and it's time we start our alternative timeline. What if, instead of landing on the familiar shores of the 17th century Massachusetts, the Pilgrims found themselves in the Mesozoic era, surrounded by colossal dinosaurs and an ecosystem untouched by human influence? So we rewind now back to when the Pilgrims set sail aboard the Mayflower. And along the way, they now get blown off course. Whether by wormhole or by taking the wrong turn at Albuquerque, somehow the Pilgrims find themselves 70 million years in the past. Who's giving them the direction? Anyways, they're now in the Cretaceous period, where beasts roam the land. Immediately, they feel a difference. The air feels richer, and the temperature is much warmer than they'd expected November in the northern hemisphere to feel. They continue on their journey, but along the way, the settlers begin to notice things in the sky, what they believe to be giant birds, but they would turn out to be giant pterosaurs. But it's not just that. They also see giant toothed whales, but these also aren't whales. They're mosasaurs. Anyways, they continue their journey as they're too far to turn back now, but it's getting hard to navigate as the stars seem to be out of order. Luckily, they see land, and it looks much different than they had imagined. This coastline was dominated by giant cycads and ferns. Soon after, they would officially land on the island continent, Appalachia, and what will in the future become the region of New England 70 million years in the future. Once they make landfall, they begin to set up their settlement, while keeping a wary eye out for the native people that might inhabit the area, as they've heard the terrifying stories of what the natives could do to them, such as the story of Roanoke. This is one of the reasons why they brought the weapons they had with them, which included muskets, swords, bows, and daggers, though they won't be running into any natives anytime soon. In this timeline, the weather is much better to the settlers than the winter they face in our timeline. Instead of freezing colds, they faced a warm and humid tropical environment, which is good in the sense that they won't freeze to death, but now they have to grapple with the fact that their crops aren't well suited to be grown in this environment. The crops they brought, barley, peas, and wheat, are all suited for the European climate and would have trouble growing in this now warm environment of the Cretaceous. In order to give these plants a good chance at growing, they'd have to be able to find a higher elevated environment where the temperatures were cooler and the air drier. But for now, the settlers would have no chance in reaching a place like that. Instead, they'd have to build their settlement along the shore. So while facing the possibility of starvation, the Pilgrims would have to survive off the supplies they brought with them, which would only last for a few months. But they could also attempt to survive off the food they could find from the land. At the period of their arrival, the precursors to many modern-day fruits would have been around and possibly could have been used to sustain the colonists, though the plant life would have been completely unknown to them, and in the pursuit of finding edible plants, undoubtedly many would find unedible plants, to say the least, and would succumb to the poisonous plants that likely dotted the Cretaceous. Plants wouldn't be their only option though. Little disclaimer here, the dinosaurs that live in the eastern United States aren't well known due to the rarity of their fossils, attributed to many factors such as tectonic shifts and the massive glaciers during the Ice Age that could have destroyed many of the fossils, which I actually just made a video about called Did the Dinosaurs Have Ice Ages? After this, give it a look if you're interested. Anyways, the animals the pilgrims would face in the Eastern Cretaceous are based off of our best scientific guesses. So anyways, another option for food would also have been to hunt. The area in which they landed was known to have herds of hadrosaurs, which if killed would have been a meal for several days for the colonists. There's just a few problems with hunting them. For one, their weapons we spoke of, muskets, swords, bows, and daggers, would have been largely ineffective to such large and scaly beasts. In order to actually take one of these animals down, they'd have to devise traps. Maybe this would look something like giant spike pits, or just by possibly chasing them off cliffs similar to what the natives did to bison in the western United States. Regardless, it definitely would be possible to hunt these animals. I mean, look what our ancestors did to the mammoths, which were definitely much smarter and of similar size to the hadrosaurs. But there's another reason this would be challenging, as they wouldn't be the only ones hunting the hadrosaurs. They would be competing against the mighty and ferocious Dryptosaurus, which could be summarized as the T-Rex of the East. Now I know all of you hardcore dinosaur fans are going to get pissed at that, so let me go into further detail. The Dryptosaurus was a large theropod dinosaur, which was speculated to be around 25 feet long, and would have boasted sharp teeth and 8-inch long razor-sharp claws. This animal would have been extremely dangerous if the pilgrims came into contact with it. So for food, the pilgrims would have to find a way to effectively hunt the Hadrosaurus while avoiding predation of their own. So acquiring food likely would have been manageable. There's still a few other considerations that would have made it harder for the colonists to have survived. The bugs and the diseases. For one, the bugs are much bigger than they are today, and likely would have carried dangerous diseases, though the 70 million year separation between the pilgrims and dinosaurs might have been a blessing or a curse. It's possible that these diseases might not have been adapted to the immune systems of humans, making them basically immune to all diseases of the time, which would have been great for the colonists. Or it could have been the other way around. Due to the 70 million year separation, the immune system would have no idea on how to fight the diseases, leading to mass death and plague for the colonists. So let's give the pilgrims the benefit of the doubt, and just assume the former is true and the colonists are immune. So let's continue assuming. Let's say the colonists are able to set up a settlement, using the prehistoric trees to build homes and defensive perimeters, as well as being able to hunt for food while also attempting to grow crops and find other plants to eat. Would the pilgrims have been able to take over the world 70 million years early? Well, first, we have to take into account that only 102 people sailed across the Atlantic aboard the Mayflower. So not taking into account the definite deaths that would have occurred due to the extreme shock of being in such a dramatically different environment. So even without that, only 20 women had been a part of the journey. While yes, there has been points in history that the human population has been low, such as one of the most well-known instances of a population bottleneck in human history, which occurred 70 to 75,000 years ago. During this time, the human population is believed to have been reduced to a relatively small number of individuals, possibly as few as several thousand. This period is sometimes referred to as the Toba catastrophe theory. Even then, still a few thousand people would have been alive and been able to reproduce. So with only 20 women available in such a small gene pool, there's just no way that a population larger than a small village would have been able to establish itself. So I'd give the pilgrims a B when it comes to chances of survival, as it all depends on how quickly they'd be able to adapt to their new environment. But I'd give them an F when it comes to taking over the world for humans, as their initial population is just far too small, likely leading to their eventual extinction. Do you guys think it could have turned out differently? And how long do you think they could have lasted? If you have anything to add, let me know down below. And please remember to check out my video on Did Dinosaurs Have Ice Ages? I would be very thankful this Thanksgiving. And on that note, thanks for watching, happy Thanksgiving, and Jehona out.